Johnny Carson's hands were trembling that night when he walked into the studio. For the first time in his 30-year career, the letter in his pocket was written in a child's handwriting, and Elvis Presley would sit in that chair in a few minutes, completely unaware. Carson turned to his producer and asked if they were really going to read this on live television. The producer nodded. "Elvis is going to kill us," Carson said. But the words in that letter, those words were going to make America cry. Nobody knew that the king of rock and roll's biggest secret was about to be revealed in front of millions that night. Let's go back 3 weeks. Memphis, Tennessee. The backyard of Graceland. It was well past midnight, and Elvis Presley was sitting alone by the pool, unopened letters in his hand, hundreds of them. Thousands of letters arrived at Graceland every day. Fan letters, marriage proposals, business offers. But the letter that caught Elvis's attention that night was different. There was a child's handwriting on the envelope. The letters were crooked, some written backwards. A small drawing of Elvis in the upper left corner. The tie and famous hairstyle were carefully drawn. When Elvis opened the envelope, a photograph fell out. A child in a hospital bed, head bandaged, eyes wide open. Elvis posters hung behind him. The letter began like this: "Dear Uncle Elvis, my name is Timmy. I'm 8 years old. The doctors are telling my mom and dad bad things, but I can hear them. I get really bored in the hospital. But when your songs play, I feel good." Elvis didn't sleep until morning that night. The next day he called his manager Jerry. "Find a kid named Timmy Morrison," he said. "He's being treated at a hospital in Chicago. And Jerry, don't tell anyone." Jerry gathered all the information within 2 days. Timmy Morrison, 8 years old, was a leukemia patient. He was being treated in the pediatric oncology department of Chicago Memorial Hospital. His family was middle class. His father was a factory worker. His mother was a housewife. The treatment costs were crushing them. Elvis didn't think twice. Within a week, all of Timmy's hospital expenses were covered by an anonymous donor. The family never learned who the money came from. The hospital administration had promised confidentiality. But this wasn't the only incident. Sarah Mitchell, 22 years old, a girl from Nashville. 6 months ago she had been in a serious car accident. Doctors said she would never walk again. The physical therapy costs were more than her family could handle. Sarah's biggest dream was to see Elvis live. Before the accident, she had planned to go to Graceland. Now she spent her days in a hospital room, listening to Elvis songs on the radio. One day, a bouquet of flowers arrived in her hospital room. The card only said, "You will stand up. I believe in you." There was no signature. But in the envelope that came with the flowers was a check that would cover all her treatment costs. Sarah sweated for 6 months. She cried, screamed, wanted to give up. But every time she read that card, "You will stand up. I believe in you," and she stood up. Doctors called it a miracle. Sarah knew it wasn't a miracle. It was someone believing in her. When Sarah recovered, her first thing was to go to Graceland. She told her story to the security guards at the gate. The guards looked at each other. Then one of them talked on the radio. 5 minutes later, the gate opened. Elvis Presley was standing at the door. Sarah didn't know what to say. She started crying. Elvis hugged her and whispered in her ear, "I believed in you." At that moment, Sarah understood. Elvis had sent the flowers and the check. NBC producer Frank Peterson was sitting in Carson's office. He had a folder in his hand. "Confidential" was written on the folder. His coffee had gone cold. He had been waiting in the same seat for 3 hours. Johnny Peterson said, "We have something for tomorrow's show. Something big." Carson curiously opened the folder. Inside was Sarah Mitchell's story, Timmy Morrison's letter, and a list of Elvis's anonymous donations, photographs, bank receipts, hospital records. Everything was documented. "Where did you get this information?" Carson asked. Peterson smiled. "Sarah Mitchell reached out to us," he said. "She wanted to tell her story. After meeting Elvis when she went to Graceland, she wanted to tell the whole world, so we investigated. And Johnny, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There was more in the folder. The help Elvis had quietly provided over the years. A donation to a family who lost their home in a fire in Memphis. A scholarship to a student who couldn't afford school in Nashville. A check anonymously sent to a worker who couldn't afford surgery in Detroit. Hospital bills, funeral expenses, daycare fees. The list went on and on. The king of rock and roll was America's quietest philanthropist, and nobody knew. Carson closed the folder and walked to the window. The lights of Burbank were shining. The Hollywood sign was visible in the distance. He wondered what Elvis's reaction would be if they broadcast this information. The man had worked hard to keep this secret. Now were they going to expose him in front of millions? Peterson stood up and came to Carson's side. "That's why we're going to surprise him," he said. "Elvis won't know anything. We'll bring Sarah to the studio. She'll wait behind the curtain. And Timmy," Carson turned. His eyes narrowed. "What about Timmy?" A mixed expression appeared on Peterson's face. He lowered his voice as if someone might hear. "We're going to set up a live connection," he said. "From Chicago Memorial Hospital. The kid is still under treatment, but his condition is stable. The doctors gave permission. The family agreed too." Timmy went crazy when he heard the news. Carson turned from the window and leaned against his desk. He folded his arms. Thousands of scenarios were running through his mind. What if Elvis got angry? What if he exploded on live TV? What if Timmy got sick from excitement? "Frank," Carson said in a serious voice, "this is a big risk. We're exposing Elvis's private life to millions." Peterson nodded. "I know, Johnny," he said. "But think about it. This man has been helping people for years and asking nothing in return. The world should know this. People need this. Especially these days. Everyone is against each other. Everyone is suspicious. Elvis's story can give people hope." Carson was silent for a while. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was past midnight. Tomorrow everything would change. Then he took a deep breath. "This will either be the most beautiful moment in television history," he said, "or Elvis will never forgive us. There's no third option." The Tonight Show studio was more crowded than ever. 300 people had taken their seats. Everyone was excited. Elvis Presley would be the guest that night. But backstage, it was a completely different picture. Sarah Mitchell was waiting in the makeup room. She had Elvis posters in her hands, the same posters she had hung on the wall in the hospital. Her legs were trembling. 6 months ago, she couldn't walk. Now she was about to appear in front of millions. In the control room, technicians were testing the connection with Chicago Memorial Hospital. Timmy's room appeared on the screen. The child was sitting in his bed, wearing an Elvis t-shirt. The nurses had combed his hair. His eyes were sparkling. And Elvis was sitting in the green room. He was wearing his famous white suit. His hair was perfectly styled, but something was bothering him. "Jerry," he said to his manager, "Carson's producer was acting strange today. Is something going on?" Jerry shrugged. "I don't know, boss," he said. "It looks like a normal show." Elvis wasn't convinced. He had been in this business for years. He could sense when something was going on. Just then the door opened. Johnny Carson walked in. Elvis stood up. Two legends shook hands. "Are you ready?" Carson asked. Elvis smiled. "I'm always ready, Johnny," he said. There was a strange sparkle in Carson's eyes. Elvis noticed it but didn't say anything. The show was starting in 5 minutes. The famous music of The Tonight Show began to play. The audience applauded. Johnny Carson came on stage with his usual charisma. "Good evening, America," Carson said. "We have a very special guest tonight. But before we get to him, I want to ask you something." Carson turned to the audience. "How many of you know someone who has quietly touched another person's life? Someone who does good deeds that no one knows about, no one sees, no one thanks?" A few hands went up. Carson nodded. "Tonight," he said, "we're going to tell the story of such a person. And that person is waiting backstage right now, completely unaware." The audience looked at each other curiously. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carson said, "the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley." Applause erupted. Elvis came on stage. He waved with his usual charisma, shook hands with a few fans, then sat in the chair next to Carson. "Johnny," Elvis said, "it's great to be here." Carson smiled. "Elvis," he said, "we're going to have a slightly different conversation with you today." Elvis's eyebrows rose slightly. "What do you mean?" Carson leaned forward. "Elvis, there are some good deeds you've done quietly, that no one knows about. No one has seen." The smile on Elvis's face froze. "Johnny," he said in a cautious voice, "what are you talking about?" Carson didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the back of the stage. "Open the curtain, please," he said. The curtain at the back of the stage slowly parted, and from there, with Elvis posters in her hands, tears streaming down her face, a young woman emerged. Sarah Mitchell. Elvis stood up from his seat. The expression on his face went back and forth between surprise and recognition. Sarah walked to the center of the stage. Her legs were trembling, but she was walking. She was doing what doctors had said was impossible 6 months ago. "Elvis," Sarah said in a trembling voice, "6 months ago I couldn't walk. Doctors said I would never walk again. And one day flowers came to my hospital room. There was no signature on the card. It just said, 'You will stand up. I believe in you.'" A deep silence fell over the studio. Sarah continued, "With those flowers came a check that covered all my treatment costs. For months I wondered, who is this person? Why did they help me? And then I went to Graceland. When I saw you at the door, I understood." Elvis's eyes had filled with tears. He didn't say anything. He couldn't. Sarah walked toward him, and Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, hugged this young woman in front of millions. Applause broke out. The audience was on their feet, but Carson knew this was just the beginning. After Sarah sat down, Carson turned to Elvis. "Elvis," he said, "this beautiful story has reached others too, and we received a letter." Carson pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, a letter written in a child's handwriting, with crooked letters. Elvis recognized that writing. His color drained. "Johnny," he said in a hoarse voice, "this is..." Carson opened the letter and began to read. "Dear Uncle Elvis, my name is Timmy. I'm 8 years old. I've been in the hospital for a very long time. Sometimes I cry at night because I'm scared. The doctors tell my mom and dad things, and then my mom cries. I can hear them." Carson's voice began to tremble, but he continued. "But when I listen to your songs, I feel good. My mom hung your posters in my room. Every morning when I wake up, I see you. And I think if Elvis is this strong, I can be strong too." A woman in the studio began to sob. "Last month something happened. The doctors said there's no more money for surgery. My dad was very sad. But then one day the doctor came and he was smiling. He said someone paid for it. Someone like an angel." Elvis bowed his head. His hands were trembling. "Uncle Elvis, I know that angel was you. I don't know how, but I know. Because in your songs you always talk about people who do good, and I want to thank you. If I get better one day, I'll come to see you. I promise." Carson lowered the letter. His eyes were filled with tears. "I love you so much, Uncle Elvis. Your little friend Timmy." The studio was completely silent. 300 people held their breath. The cameras were focused on Elvis's face, and Elvis Presley was crying, silently, tears streaming down his cheeks. The king of rock and roll in front of millions was broken by an 8-year-old child's letter. Carson took a deep breath. The lights in the studio dimmed slightly. The cameraman switched to the third camera, wide angle. Everyone sensed something was about to happen. "Elvis," Carson said in a soft voice, "this story doesn't end here." Elvis raised his head. His eyes were still moist. "What do you mean, Johnny?" Carson pointed to the large screen at the back of the stage. Technicians were making final checks. A nurse in Chicago was fixing Timmy's hair one last time. Everything had been planned within an hour, but seconds felt like hours. Timmy is at Chicago Memorial Hospital right now, Carson said, and he wants to talk to you. Elvis's face froze for a moment. Then he understood. His eyes widened. His lips trembled. He tried to get up from his seat, but his legs wouldn't hold him. He sat back down. Carson put his hand on Elvis's shoulder. "Are you ready?" he whispered. Elvis nodded. He couldn't speak. The screen flickered. First snow, then a gray image. Then clarity came. And the image of the hospital room appeared. White walls, blue curtains, beeping machines. Chicago's gray sky was visible through the window, and in the middle of the bed, sitting among pure white sheets, a small child, Timmy Morrison. He still had bandages on his head, but fewer than before. His face was pale. His cheekbones had become prominent. There was an IV needle in his arm, but his eyes were sparkling. There was no illness in those eyes. There was hope in those eyes. "Uncle Elvis," Timmy said in a trembling voice. "I can see you." His voice was thin, hoarse, but filled with happiness. His mother, sitting next to him, was pressing a handkerchief to her eyes. His father was standing by the door, arms folded, lips pressed tight, barely holding back tears. Elvis stood up. This time his legs held. He took a few steps toward the screen. Then he stopped. He was only a few meters from the screen, but it felt like oceans between them. He didn't know what to do. Throughout his career he had sung to millions of people, but now he didn't know what to say to a single child. "Timmy," Elvis said in a hoarse voice, "I got your letter." A huge smile appeared on Timmy's face. His teeth were missing. One of his front teeth had just fallen out. But that smile was the most beautiful smile in the world. "Really, Uncle Elvis? Did you read it? Did you read all of it?" Elvis nodded. There was a lump in his throat. He tried to swallow. "I read every word, son," he said. "Every word. I read it several times. And every time." He stopped. He couldn't continue. Timmy leaned forward curiously. "What happened every time, Uncle Elvis?" Elvis smiled. He smiled through his tears. "Every time my eyes filled up, Timmy," he said. "Just like they are now." A woman in the studio began crying quietly. Then a man. Then someone else. 300 people in front of television history were crying quietly. Timmy shyly tugged at his blanket. "My mom hung the posters again," he said. "The old ones were torn. She got new ones." "Look, Uncle Elvis." The camera turned slightly. Elvis posters hung on the walls. Dozens of them. Elvis was in every corner of the room. Concert posters, movie posters, magazine covers. There was even a poster on the ceiling, so Timmy would see it first when he woke up. Elvis smiled, a real smile this time. "That looks great, Timmy," he said. "You have more posters of me in your room than I do. I don't even have this many in my own room." Timmy laughed. The child's laughter filled the studio. In that moment, that tiny moment, everyone forgot about the illness. Everyone forgot about the hospital. There was only a child's laughter. Then Timmy's face became serious. His smile slowly faded. The light in his eyes changed. Now there was fear there. A fear that an 8-year-old child should never have to carry. "Uncle Elvis," the child said, "am I going to get better?" Everyone in the studio held their breath. Carson closed his eyes. Even the cameraman stopped his hand for a moment. This question changed everything. This question wasn't a game, wasn't a script, wasn't television. This was real. An 8-year-old child was afraid of death and wanted an answer. Elvis paused for a moment. Then he approached the screen. "Timmy," he said, "I'm going to tell you something, and this is very important. Are you listening?" Timmy nodded. "The strongest thing in life," Elvis said, "is believing. You believed in my songs. You believed in me. And I believe in you, Timmy. You're a strong kid. I can see it in your eyes." Timmy's eyes filled with tears. Elvis continued, "And I promise you," he said, "I'm going to come see you. I'm going to come to your hospital and sing with you. This is a promise, Timmy. Elvis Presley's promise." Timmy started crying, but these were tears of happiness. Really, Uncle Elvis? Are you really going to come? Elvis put his hand on his heart. The king's word, he said. And the king never goes back on his word. Applause erupted in the studio. But this wasn't ordinary applause. People were crying and applauding. They were standing and applauding. Timmy waved on the screen. I love you, Uncle Elvis, he said. Elvis smiled. I love you too, son, he said. We'll see each other very soon. The screen went dark. Johnny Carson stood up. Throughout his career, he had experienced many moments. But this was different. Elvis, Carson said. Tonight you taught us something. That true greatness isn't on the stage, but behind it. Elvis bowed his head. Johnny, he said, I just wanted to help. I know, he said. And that's not what makes you a king, Elvis. That's what makes you human. Elvis stood up. He looked at the studio, the cameras, the millions of viewers. Sometimes the greatest reward, Elvis said, is being able to touch someone's life, not the applause of millions. A child's smile. Elvis walked to the center of the stage. He took the microphone in his hand. This song, he said, is for Timmy. And Elvis Presley, that night in front of millions, sang only for one child, Legacy. That night The Tonight Show became one of the most watched programs in history. The next day, all the newspapers ran the same headline, The King's Heart. Elvis kept his word. 2 weeks later, he went to Chicago Memorial Hospital. No security, no press, no cameras, just Elvis and Timmy. They spent 2 hours in Timmy's room. Elvis sang songs, told stories. Timmy laughed. Timmy got better. The treatment took a long time. There were difficult days, but Timmy always remembered that night. The light in Elvis's eyes, the warmth in his voice, the promise he made. And Elvis continued to do good quietly, because that night he learned something. The most powerful song is the one that goes unsung, and the most valuable crown is the one that shines where no one can see. What about you? Maybe someone is waiting for a message from you today. Maybe a phone call, maybe a text, maybe just a smile. Elvis sang to millions. But the moment that changed his life was a promise he made to a single child. Do you have a promise to make too? If this story touched your heart, share it. Someone might need it. And if this is your first time on this channel, subscribe. Because here we don't just tell stories. Here, we remind you of moments that should never be forgotten. See you in the next story.